Hey everyone. So I wanted to do this video. I've wanted to do it for a little bit now. I've had some people actually ask me about my funeral speech for my grandfather. For those that didn't know, he passed away August 21st, 2024. Some people heard about my funeral speech. It was a little less on the traditional side, but I think really captured the way that my grandfather would have wanted it. I spent a long time writing it once I realized how sick that he was. We weren't really expecting to lose him, and certainly not as quickly as we did. Um, he ended up getting a cancer diagnosis that nobody was really expecting. When he first kind of went in and out of the hospital, they told him he had a chest infection, drained a bunch of fluid out of his chest, treated him for that. He went home, went back in. They said he had pneumonia, treated him for that, came home, went back in, and then that's when he got the cancer diagnosis. So, like I said, nobody was really expecting it, and I certainly wasn't expecting it to take hold and take him as quickly as it did. So, definitely unexpected, but super thankful for the time that we had, because 38 years with a grandparent is certainly a long time, and I'm certainly thankful that I had that time with him. So like I said, I wanted to do this video. This is take 3 now, because can't seem to read this stinking thing. But like I said, it's a little untraditional. At the time of the funeral, I ended up losing it and doing a ugly cry, which I don't normally do ever. I knew what I'd written because I spent a lot of time on it. So some of it was off cuff and at the points that I knew it kind of was. And for whatever reason, this evening I am having troubles reading this stinking thing, and I just kind of want to nail it because now I'm on video, and this is kind of the forever thing. So, at the time of the funeral, I certainly knew leading up to it that I wanted to speak. There was no doubt I would have fought whoever to speak at my grandfather's funeral. So it ended up being my grandmother and I. Mainly, some people came up and shared memories. That wasn't really planned, but was awesome to hear. So I was like the first person to speak behind the person that kind of opened up, and I wasn't anticipating that. There was no real order or anything like that, and all of a sudden they called my name, and my mind just went, and then I was just kind of in autopilot. So some of this, if you were at the funeral, especially like the very beginning part, like when I was walking up, is different than at the time of the funeral. But my mind was just going like this, and completely forgot the first part. so we're gonna see if we can't get through this thing now. So I'm gonna step back and act like I'm walking up from my seat. Imagine that I have button-up shirt and sport coat and stuff on. So tonight it's a hoodie. Here we go. So walking up, I wanted to take the shirt and jacket off. Say, man, it's getting hot in here. And reveal my grandpa was my guy shirt. So missed that part. But anyways, here's the speech. And I hope you enjoy. How are you guys doing today? For those who don't know me, I'm Zach. Wait a second. You didn't really think I was going to say, how are you guys doing today? And just move along, did you? You're not Guy. That's Guy. And the beautiful yet sad thing is that he's the reason that we're all here. He lived a life worth celebrating, and our lives are at least a little better because he was in it, or we wouldn't be here. So again, I'm Zach, and I'm Guy's favorite, oldest grandson. He always had to throw in oldest just to keep me in check. For 38 years, I've had the privilege of living a life with my grandfather around, even though we didn't always see eye to eye. Only because he was shorter than me. That's why he'd always grab a chair, a stair, or anything else he could stand on when he saw me, just to give me his famous hugs with that big old smile and say, I love you, man. I can't accurately imitate it, but I can still hear him saying it. Over the course of my life, I've gathered a lot of memories and lessons. many that others aren't fortunate enough to experience with their grandparents. So I'm extremely fortunate to have had 38 years with him. Some of the memories have faded, but others feel like they happened only yesterday. One thing about my grandfather is that he never met a stranger he didn't know. He was the type of guy who would give you anything he had if you were in need, a true shirt off his back kind of man. He had this incredible ability to strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere. He would constantly have something quick to say to strangers as he walked by, as if he were joking with a lifelong friend. A quick trip to the store with him would generally turn into a longer excursion than it had to be due to his frequent chats. He just had that kind of presence, though. He could make anyone that gave him a minute of their time feel like family. When I think back on my memories with him, a couple stand out. One being the only time I recall my grandfather being upset with me. As a young boy, I had what I thought, at least at the time, was an entrepreneurial mindset. One Easter, as us grandkids went around finding plastic Easter eggs in the yard, I went around shaking all the eggs because I knew the sound of the ones that I wanted to keep. Shake. No. Shake. Yup. When we went back inside and started opening our eggs, I had a pile of money growing in front of me. My grandfather caught on to my little scheme of mine where I had collected all the eggs with money, leaving little if any for others to find. He was so disappointed in me. He literally chased me out of the house after raising his voice as he said my name, Zachary. Another time we were out on a small boat on the Cuyahoga River fishing. It was his friend, Mr. Higgins, in front, me in the middle, and my grandfather at the back, manning the motor. On one particular cast, I hooked into something big. I was retrieving my lure after it cast toward the bank, and when it hit, it bent my rod dang near 180 degrees. I mean, on that hook was a real lunker for a young boy, my age. I was really struggling to reel it in, mainly because it was a large log under the water. But as we maneuvered over to retrieve the lure, both my grandfather and I leaned over at the same time. He was sitting on a little chair mounted on the hard bench seat built into the boat. And with us both leaning over, the boat rocked just enough. His chair came loose, and he ended up diving head first into the river with such form that any Olympic diving judge would have given him a... And at this point, I held up a paper that said 10 on it. So... you don't get that part. Now, if you really knew my grandfather, you'd know he absolutely loved water. I'm only kidding. He hated water. I'm not even sure you could get that man to take a bath. But imagine this for a second. A man who has a massive, near debilitating fear of water, and that's no joke, joins the Navy to proudly serve his country. On a ship, cruising the ocean, with no signs of land in sight at times. I guess he really wasn't lying when he would tell me they wouldn't find anything but air between his ears. But there he was, briefly submerged in the water of the mighty Cuyahoga. His head crests back up, and I'm giggling and pointing like the dog from the old Nintendo game Duck Hunt. I'm kidding, but I remember his panic, the fear in his eyes, and how all he simply had to do was stand up. The water wasn't even that deep. We always laughed about this memory. Well, at least I did. Maybe that's why he would occasionally hit me with a, "You never liked me anyhow," in his sad yet joking voice after a joke at his expense. But truth be told, I love that guy. Sadly, more than he probably ever knew. But he never made me question the love he had for me. I'm sure it's the same for many of you as well. My grandfather also had an immense love for the stars in the nighttime sky. He would often share his fascination with anyone who would listen. He was a 20-year volunteer and sky ranger for the Portage Park District and helped develop their astronomy program. It's also fitting that he donated a telescope to a church observatory being built in southern Ohio. I received word 4 days ago, this was before the funeral, that the observatory will be named the Gillespie Observatory once completed, hopefully within the next year. His love for the twinkle of the stars in the sky was only outmatched by the woman who kept the bright twinkle in his eyes for over 60 years, my grandmother Jackie. My grandmother loved I'm messing it up. My grandfather loved my grandmother immensely. I'd only seen my grandfather cry once in my life, and it was in reference to my grandmother and his love for her. And then there's his famous saying, if you ever asked him how he was, his reply would almost always be fat, crabby, and ugly. Of course, he didn't mean it, he just had a unique way of making us laugh and keeping things light. But if you think about it, maybe he was telling us something more. Fat could represent the fullness of his life, filled with the love, laughter, and memories he shared with all of us to remember him by. Crabby might remind us of his harmless stubbornness and to not let the small stuff in life drag you down. And ugly? Well, maybe that was his way of showing us that beauty isn't about looks, but about the beauty we can still find in life when times feel so ugly, such as now. With that, I raise a can of his favorite beer. A root beer. And a toast from all of us to our favorite guy. May we never forget the warmth of his hug, the beauty of his smile, and the showering of love he gave out daily wherever he would go. So cheers to the fattest, crabbiest, and ugliest guy we all knew, who'd want us to keep our eyes dry and our smiles wide in his memory. For this isn't goodbye, it's merely a till we meet again. So cheers, Grandpa. I love you. And that was my speech. And I hate root beer as much as I hate beer. So, Grandpa, that's just how much I love you.